Yes. Welcome to everyone. You are numerous. We start earlier than predicted because we are very efficient and not like trains today. And today we speak about the title of this talk is Eco-Centric lighting. So the topic is deals with the outdoor lighting. And we have to notice that since the advent of electric light, the world has changed. And also people have changed. And their habits have changed. And electric light, outdoor electric light allows us to live in an outdoor environment, to move in them, and also to enjoy these environments. So we defeat the darkness, we try to defeat the darkness, extended and enjoying the exterior environment. Anyway, some issues arose during time. First of all, not always light is comfortable. We could have glare effects like me in this morning, and also all of them. And moreover, we have light pollution. We have obtrusive light. And last but not least, we have also not only for outdoor but even for indoor environments, the attenuation of the rhythm of darkness and light. So some disruption of circadian rhythms could be obtained. For this reason, and recently, in these last years, another concept has spread, the fact that outdoor light has an impact on all living beings on our heart. So we have to take account to this effect. We also have to consider that today we dispose of new technologies, so we can shape the spectrum of the light. We can adapt the light in order to obtain the best condition for all these conditions, but this is very, very difficult. Last but not least, we have also the impact of lighting systems on the environment. So we have the CO2 emissions, we have to save energy, and so even energy efficiency has its weight. So this topic is very, very complex, and just for this we invited 4 experts with the different fields. And I introduce them to you. Steve Fotios, close to me, is coming from UK. He is professor of lighting and visual perception at the University of Sheffield, where he leads the lighting research group. And I admire him because he devotes a lot of time to young people, and specifically to PhD students. And I love this because we have to invest into young people, and specifically for academic problems with the PhD. So this is really good. And in the research community, he is well known because he is the Associate Director of Division 4 of the CIE, Outdoor Lighting. And moreover, he is also Associate Editor of the very prestigious journal for us who work in lighting. You are, oh, sorry, I was not updated, sorry, so it is not associate but is chief editor, but this is the most precious journal for us. We publish, it is an honor for us to publish in this journal, the name of which is Lighting Research and Technology. So what are why I invited Steve? Because his research fields cover both lighting for people, specifically for pedestrians, and I recently noticed that you are devoted to cyclists, so people who are not drivers, but all the other people who walks in the city or in other places. Moreover, another interesting thing is that he studies very deeply the human vision in different conditions. For example, as you know, and this is the first question that I wanted to ask you is that just because in outdoor environments during night time with outdoor light, we don't work in photopic vision, the lambda is not valid, but in mesopic, but all the standards consider photopic quantities, illuminances, luminance, and so and so. So this is not covered. So I ask Steve, what do you think about this? And do you think we have, yes, you have to change, otherwise I should work? No.
I switched it off to save
yes,
energy.
Perfect. So the question is this one.
To answer? Right, okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to talk.
Yeah.
Sometimes I never stop.
Okay.
So the question is about how much light do we provide? So, as Laura said, I'm interested in lighting for pedestrians and cyclists. To answer that, I've got to start with another thought, which is, what are the benefits of light? So, at night, there's no daylight, so we need some lighting to help us see. We see it to be seen. And we think, what are the benefits of lighting? Well, lighting can make pedestrians feel safer, and that means they're more likely to walk. Lighting can help them be physically safer, so they're more likely to detect hazards. Lighting can reduce some types of crime, not all by a long way, but some specific types of crime are probably reduced. Lighting can increase our risk of being seen by a driver, so it reduces the risk and severity of road traffic collisions. So lighting is brilliant. I think for people, lighting at night is brilliant, especially if, like me, you walk everywhere. That tells us lighting is good. Then the next question is, how much light should we provide? And there we're a bit stuck. I want to know what is the optimal amount of light. And this is going to vary by loads of situations, but I'm trying to find the optimal amount of light. And I'm thinking totally of lighting for people. I'm just looking at that. Now, we should be able to look in standards, and the recommendation you get in standards like the European and the CIE standards to say what amount of light should we provide. But unfortunately, I remain totally unconvinced that these are in any way optimal or based on empirical data. And I say that because I've been looking for 20 years for the basis and I still haven't found it. If there is one, it's extremely well hidden. So I've led loads of research trying to find out for different situations, for different tasks, what happens if we change light level and the colour of light and things like that. And I'm interested in finding the optimal because I think it feeds into the counter-arguments for lighting. Now, the lighting could be, it could be that current light standards are perfect. By coincidence, they could be exactly right. Or it could be for optimal needs of people, we need a whole lot more light, or we may need a whole lot less. I'm trying to find this out so that when lighting designers are faced with requests to use lower light levels to save energy or to reduce other ecological impacts, I want to be able to say, what effect does that have on people? Now, if our light levels are currently too high above optimal, that means we can reduce and won't have any effect at all. But if our light levels are currently optimal or suboptimal, then a reduction is going to be harmful for people. And if we reduce the benefit of light for pedestrians and cyclists, they're more likely to be hit by a vehicle, well, that's pretty harmful to health. They're less likely to walk, that's pretty harmful to health and for global population health as well. So I'm trying to establish optimal conditions of lighting for the different needs of pedestrians and cyclists. One success so far in the British standard, the new one that came out in 2020, based on this kind of research, we now use lower light levels. That's pretty good, lower light levels. Now, the question about mesopic or photopic, that's not just light level, that is spectrum and light level. I think that's more of a trivial question compared to finding the optimal. That is just, maybe ideally we'd measure with a mesopic meter, but there isn't one yet, so we have to do a two-step process. We've got to think of the light level and the spectrum. But I don't think that's necessarily a problem. It's finding out what matters in the first place. That's what I'm doing, and that's what I'm encouraging other people to do.
It's great, thank you. So, British standard is different from the European one. Okay. So,
It's
yeah.
It's slightly different. So the British standard says which of the lighting classes in the European standard should be used.
Okay.
And instead of using P1 to P6, it does P3, P6.
Okay.
It's the lower.
Okay,
the
so
lower
it's
one.
lower. So the categories are the same, but we use lower. Categories. So remaining in the field of standards, we have GianPiero Bellomo. I introduced him. He's an electrotechnical engineer with over, here it seems, 40 years of experience. He's been well the professional lighting sector, and he has also been involved also in the design and in training of very huge installations, being management and map systems. And he also is a strange professional because he carries out applied research of lighting technologies for sport and environmental sustainability. So he's a complex, he has a complex profile. But the important is that remaining in the field of standards, he is a member of the main standard organization, both Italian nationals and European, China, and also ISO International. So he is very active in these activities, and for this he is also a technical director and head of the research and development at I read because I don't remember, Tech-Nyx, and so he performs applied lighting research with, I already saw, a focus on the environmental impact. So I want to ask you if the standards are reliable now, and what are you doing in this field? What are the issues and what are the strengths of this, of what you are doing in the current standard?
Okay, so just talking about standard in lighting pollution, in Italy we have a old story because we started in 1999 to write the first norms about lighting pollution. That was not real very user norms because in that period the focus of the attention on light pollution was mainly directed on the sky glow. And so when we published that norms, the astrophiles was not very happy about that because they thought that was not enough aggressive to reduce the lighting pollution on the sky. So, by the way, when we started to rewrite the norms, we decided to open the normative table to all the stakeholders that are interested to this argument. So we invited the governative part, regulatory part of some region, lighting designer, producer, all the figures that was interested in this aspect was invited to the table. The goal was not to write a norms that specify limits, but to write a norm that specify needed. The idea was just because in Italy we have a lot of different law in any region as a specific law with different parameters and different approaches. So we decided to turn the problem on the other side and specify a method that was shared by the technical community and define only the methodology to evaluate it, to prevent the light, the stray light, and to calculate before to install a lighting installation that creates stray light. And also to measure in a second step when the light installation is done, just to control what's the real quantity of stray lights. So the norm, in fact, is a collection of methods that are focused on each kind of application: road lighting, sports lighting, area lighting, garden lighting, every kind of application, with a specific method that give the possibility to evaluate in a very simple way, not precisely, but in a very simple way, just because the norm is intended to use to the lighting design, to the professional that dealing with lighting, to evaluate in a very simple way the quantity of stray lighting that a certain installation produces. So when we finished that norm, everybody was good enough, and we proposed this norm to the European community, and we had a good response, and the European community gave us the goal to create a group. So the community, the CEN, create a group. The group is called Working Group 15. And now we are dealing with the European norm, dealing about the same task with the same goal. So collected methods that are, of course, in this case, also related to the other experience in other countries. But the idea is the same, to create a collection of methods to evaluate the lighting pollution, the lighting, the stray lighting in all these kind of application. And I'm proud to be the chairman of this group, and this is the goal, to create an evaluation method, not to stabilize the limits, not create limits.
What is the expected time for the outcome of this?
I hope before the end of 24.
Okay, so we are close to the provision of this standard. So I hope that in Italy, things,
at the moment we have our 10, 8, 19 norms. That is the,
yes, I know.
And what we expect is that this became a scientific base that all the law will be constructed upon. So it's like a basement when you construct a new legislation. Regional or national, that doesn't matter. But the idea is to create a very set of standard parameters that all are.
So this is a great goal, and I hope that everything will be provided as soon as possible. And, so remaining in the field of light pollution, so I already said that GianPiero is expert also in environmental sustainability. One of the main problems is how to measure this pollution and how to quantify it and what we can do when we realize that, obviously, according to the specific application, we overcome some limits. For this reason, I invited Stefano Cavazzani, who is a researcher of the University of Padova, but he also works in the Department of Mechanical and Industrial Engineering in Norway, Trondheim, and with the Department of Physics and Astronomy. And he is also associated with the Istituto Nazionale, the National Institute of Astrophysics, so he's an astronomer. But what is important is an expert of light pollution, site testing, atmospheric quantum transmission, big data analysis, and the development and calibration of instruments and sensors that can allow to measure atmosphere and the possible problems. So I asked to Stefano, what are the current tools and devices used today for measuring and monitoring light pollution? How can we measure it? What can be done?
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Before answering the question, I would like to communicate that I have prepared a short PDF presentation of the subject. It will be useful for the type of topics covered to have visual support, but the limited time it will not allow it. However, if anyone would like to learn more, I will be happy to send the presentation via email. The study of artificial light at night, ALAN, and the consequent light pollution in recent years has had a great increase, as evidenced by great increase in interest and scientific publications. A first distinction between instruments and data families is between satellite and ground-based data. There are numerous satellites that study ALAN, but the most widely used instrument is the Visible Infrared Imaging Radiometer Suite, VIRS, mounted on NASA Polar satellite. Satellite data allows you to observe the entire globe of the Earth with a long time archive. A major limitation of polar satellites is their temporal resolution. They only pass over the same site twice a day. The most widely used ground data instruments are the Sky Quality Meters, SQM. This is an instrument used to measure the luminance of the night sky and use units of magnitude per square arc-second. A second tool is the spectrometer. It measures the spectrum of electromagnetic radiation. For example, the properties of light as a function of wavelength. In fact, it's essential to consider that not only the quantity for radiation emitted and dispersed in the atmosphere should be analyzed, but also the spectral characteristic of this radiation. In fact, we will see how blue radiation is more polluting than red radiation. The SQM is a rather cheap tool, around 300 euros, and is the most used. There is a very large international network for monitoring ALAN. However, this instrument is not very sensitive to monitor the characteristics of the emitted radiation. In fact, a spectrometer is necessary to study the spectrum. This instrument for studying the sky is very expensive, approximately 20 €. But it allows sampling the entire spectrum of the emitted radiation. Because of this high cost, a more reliable parameter used for wavelength estimation is color temperature. Color temperature is a physical quantity associated with the tone of light. Its temperature corresponds to a single tone, and it is measured in Kelvin. A red line can have a color temperature of about 1000 Kelvin, while a blue light of 10,000 Kelvin. The Veneto region is the only one to have set a limit of 3000 Kelvin to limit the blue emissions. The limit drops to 2000 Kelvin for particularly protected areas. Finally, I would like to talk about a new type of tool for monitor ALAN, which are drones. ARPA Veneto has assembled one and calibrated it in luminance to observe at a higher resolution the radiation emitted from top to bottom and as a function of altitude. This data is very complex to analyze, considering the atmospheric change due to the altitude, especially in relation to aerosol.
Thank you so much. I have a curiosity. You measure also this from satellite or perhaps by other devices. So the limits are not on the emission. So you measure what is emitted directly and also reflected by the ground.
Yes,
so,
the diffusion,
okay.
the scattering.
Okay, and then the scattering of the atmosphere.
Yes,
okay.
and for this reason,
so
the model is very, very complex.
Okay. Okay. So, as you saw, there are several different issues to be combined. But last but not least, we have to design light. And just for this, I invited a lighting designer, an architect. He's an architect, graduated at the Politecnico of Milano, but he also had some student exchanges with UK University. And he is devoted to light since 2007, but it is only on 2019 that he has its own society, its own studio. Before, he experienced in different offices and other studios. So now can be defined an independent architect and light designer. And just for this, I am conscious that he is also a member of the board of the Italian Association of Lighting Design. The acronym is AILD. So it is important that we hear also the point of view of who designs that. And I want to ask you, what for outdoor lighting we need to consider both, as we said, humans, but also nature, ecosystems. Based on what assumption do you favor one time humans and otherwise being different species in order to preserve biodiversity?
Yeah, I think it's very complex because the equilibrium we have to balance is it's very difficult. And but the answer is GianPiero, who define if I have to care more about humans or more about animals. Obviously, if I have to build to project a lighting set for a cyclopath in a city, it's different. If I'm working in the open field, if I have to cross a wood, it's obvious that I have to be very respectful to the animals who is living there, which means that I will keep the minimum standard for humans because I want to save as much more as possible the animals. I don't want to bother them. I'm a guest in that case, and I don't want to sterilize the nature. Because obviously, if I want to take a walk across the wood during the night, let the fireflies or the bats or stuff like that. So I don't want to absolutely bother them. I want to see them. So the answer is the environment. But then after we define what kind of environment are we facing, then we to build a strategy. And technology can help us about this. So, like for example, during the night at 3 o'clock, probably there's no one working on the cyclopath, which means that I can switch off the light completely. So probably the animals they don't are affected about anything. But if some of you asking, okay, but I want to take a walk during the night, okay, I can put some sensors and can reveal the presence of the human being. Then we can discuss how much time I can keep on the light at 3 o'clock in the night. Still, we save a lot of energy and we respect the animals. So I think that technology can help us a lot about this. Then I have to speak also with the companies who build dams and asking, actually before I have to speak with the biologists, asking what's the best LED for this kind of animal, for in this specific environment, because not all the animals are reacting the same way at the same spectrum. So I have to study before what kind of animals, and then I can ask the companies to give me the right product with the right characteristic. So there is, starting from the environment, then there are so many steps to arrive to the right solution, to be respectful and to save the landscape and the animals. That's
Yes. Obviously, when we have a very complex environment, it's very difficult. So biologists has to give us a lot of further information about. We have different species, as you can follow. So the acknowledgement of the specific environment is very important. We have to cooperate with other professional use. That's all. This is one of the reasons because you all different around this table. Oh, it's not round. So, Steve, do you want to comment some more on what you heard till now, or
Always.
always? Thanks.
That's the point of being an academic. You have to talk.
Yeah.
See, I agreed to come. It's a long way from Sheffield to get here. I agreed to come because I like this idea of talking with people who represent different viewpoints on the question. I like that. I once went to a well-known conference that looks at artificial light at night. I thought I would go along and present work on the benefits of light, but almost got shooed away from the stage quickly before any interesting questions were asked. So I like this talking. And I think that is the way forward. Something I've noticed is, so that was me giving the example of going to a conference where the main focus is always like the negatives of lighting at night, and it attracts a certain crowd. The conferences I go to are probably talking about the benefits of lighting at night. That attracts a different crowd, and if they don't meet, we'll never come to a resolution. So I kind of like this process. Cool, I want to do more on this. It's brilliant. What generally stops us is the F word we've got to bring, which is funding. And I can get funding for certain types of things. That's it. That's the thing that generally holds us up. Compared to things with bio or something else in the name, lighting is a very sensitive topic. So it's tricky to get funding. We do what we can. And as an example of this, speaker number 4 said something along the lines of, where there's a concerned environment, I'm going to use a minimum standard, something like that. This is why I do what I do, because I want to make sure that when you use a minimum standard, it is a reasonable estimate. It's not guessed by somebody who can shout loudly, which is my opinion of the basis of current standards as being able to shout loudly. You win. Right? So I'm trying to get evidence which says this is real, this is the real thing. So when a designer uses it, they can have confidence it's meaningful. If they want to use less than that, then they know, well, we're going to impair the benefits for people. Maybe fewer people will walk. Maybe more people will increase the risk of an accident. But they need to know that. That's what I'm working on. So that's it. I like the collaboration. I want to see more of that. Bring on the funding and we can do even more. And I think that there was a good comment from the second speaker who was talking about measurement. I like this. It was something about keeping it simple. I really love simplicity. I hate complex equations, and I think that ruins a lot of good research. And looking at for the process, not the thresholds. I think that's pretty good. If we could look at the method and have a reasonable estimate of that, we might make progress. But if we start arguing about thresholds, as soon as you give me a number, I'm going to spend the next 20 years proving why it was wrong. So I like process, not thresholds.
Yes, I know. And thresholds can be changing, can be easily changing, obviously, but the process must be defined very accurately. So I agree totally with this. But I want to ask you another thing. What do you, just because Paolo said that something could be done by controls, switching on the light, as far as I understand, when people is walking or cycling is walking, and switching off in other periods. What do you think? Do you think that this could be a future possibility or not?
Okay, I think it's a future possibility. I'm reluctant to say I support that now, especially the thing that's called, I think, adaptive lighting is. Because when we adapt from one level to another, we don't have a clue which is the right level for anything at the minute. I think we're misleading ourselves if we think adaptive lighting is any kind of solution. I would be happy, I think lighting should be responsive. If we had good design standards, maybe it'd be good in the first place. I'm happy with things being switched according to the need. Like if there is a link between lighting and traffic flow on roads associated with crashes, I would be pleased to see that implemented. I'm yet to remain convinced there is one because the evidence isn't there. Switching on and off, that's a tricky one. It's like there's so many questions about how do you switch it on and off when is If the thought of going, technology fails far too often, I'll need to
Also,
walk to an
which
area.
luminaires.
It's going to annoy the residents. It might even be worse for the environment if it's dark and then suddenly goes light, maybe worse. So this is why I've been focusing on optimal light levels, with a thought that maybe they can be at the lower end. I think through history we've gone, light levels gone up and up and up, not because they need to, but because we can, and energy was cheap and abundant, so who cares really? So we've had light levels, and maybe they were too high. So I'm trying to look at what the optimum is. Maybe that will be lower, I haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be lower, maybe it won't, but if we can find the optimum, I think that's what we need.
We can stress out that the simpler is the best, and sometimes perhaps it is so. Let's go again to GianPiero, just because we have so these different needs among nature, humans, security, safety, but also species preservation. How important is a proper balance based on human requirements, obviously, nature preservation, and also energy-saving needs, or environmental sustainability more in general?
Yeah. That's a very good question. It's important for me that we are focused on the fact that electric lighting is made for human needs. That's the goal. And of course, we have not to forget the environment when we live, where we live, and the influence that we create with our life and to the environment. But the problem is that we have to keep in balance all the benefits and all the negative effects that one choice brings with it. For example, there are evidence, Steve told before, that there are evidence that light reduces incident in the road. Light created effect negative for some species of blue lighting. Light effect create light pollution with high energy LED, and that's okay. But also there is the real benefits of lighting created by the reduction of crime. Until now, there was more or less an idea that light reduces crime, but finally there is a study. There is a study published in USA, and they make a very interesting study. I mentioned here this is the evidence from a randomized experiment of street lighting in New York City, April 24, 2019. This is very interesting studies because they, for the first time, analyzed the lighting effect in a city, and they found that, of course, the study is done with a scientific approach in randomized approach. They create some area with more lighting and some area with less lighting, and they found that in the area with more lighting, there is a reduction of crime of 36% at least. And the study is important because the evidence of this show that if you have to balance all the benefits, you have to take in account also the costs that derive from certain ideas that the light bring with it. For example, if you reduce the crime, you don't only reduce the crime, you reduce the cost of the police investigation, you reduce the cost of incarceration, you reduce the cost of damage, and so on. So when we approach a certain idea about which kind of light we have to create, we have to planning, or also when we create a law that prescribes a certain approach to the lighting, we have to balance all things together. And that is a very complex thing because there is no evidence and no data for all this kind of aspect. And so I think that in the future, just because this argument is really focused on the interest of all people, became new and interesting studies that give us more important information on that.
Thank you. I want to add also a personal sensation. It's a sensation that when I walk in a well-lit environment, I feel safer, even if the thieves are not there. Otherwise, I don't know why, but it is so. For example, I live in Naples. Naples, the thieves are working 24 hours a day, no problem. But during the day, I walk with a safer perception of the environment. When it's, let's say, 11 p.m. And so on, and the light is not proper, I have fear, so I avoid to walk alone, especially. So there is also, I think, this aspect that we should consider. Thank you. Okay, and let's pass to Stefano again. So you are, we noticed that you are the chief of light pollution, and region Veneto is the best region that allows to measure all these quantities to create database and so on and so on. So I'm wondering this thing. Having detected this light pollution, what have you observed during the last years? Because during the last years we observed a changing from, let's say, traditional lighting to LED, and new installations were made. So, what are the trends? What you observe?
Yes. Surely the laws and the regulation described by GianPiero have provided a fundamental tool for the control and limitation of the increase of alarm. In fact, satellite data show an exponential increase from 1992 to 2012, and then flattening out and remaining approximately constant over the last 5 years. Furthermore, 2020 and 2021 have an alarm drop due to the COVID pandemic. Indeed, Alan's study provides an indicative measurement of human activity. In reality, the emission peaks do not increase from satellite. The emission area increase, for example, the number of light points. ARPA of Veneto has an excellent SQM network. It includes sites with low light pollution at altitude greater than 1,000 meters and highly contaminated sites such as the cities of Padova Valley. Thanks to the commitment of ARPA and the intervention of public lighting, we can see a rated constant trend over the last 10 years. The unregulated private contribution compared to the regulated public contribution is a big problem, but at the moment there is no time to discuss it. Going back to the trend, a decrease is actually observed, which however could be to the aging of the sensor or to the change in atmospheric condition, in particular less aerosol and therefore less scattering. Finally, in the last 2 years, we assembled a spectrometer aimed at studying the spectrum of the sky. The instrument has a great resolution and exposure capacity. Private construction has also allowed saving of 50%. We consider that a commercial Minolta spectrometer costs around 25 kilo euros. Our cost around 10 kilo euros. The cost is due to the characteristic for the study of the sky spectrum, which requires a larger spatial resolution and longer exposure time, about 1 minute. For example, a much cheaper spectrometer for street light costs around 2 kilo euros. However, it has a maximum exposure time in order of seconds, which is not suitable for studying the night sky. The most recent spectra collected in Asiago show a drop in red radiation and increase in blue radiation, probably due to the private contribution. However, the problem must be investigated in order to understand the origin of this contribution. The scattering models in the atmosphere are very complex, especially for the more diffuse blue radiation. Trends are therefore an important control tool and indication of the right path for the reduction of ALAN and its most harmful component.
Thank you so much. But I'm wondering, you are ARPAV, that is this institution for the Veneto region, but we have 20 or 21, I don't remember, Italian regions, and in the other ones, I think that they are, for me, in Campania, ARPAC, they are doing nothing. So I'm asking if your instruments, your results could be spread over region, and in order to map, because you are mapping only the Veneto region, which is a small part, a very industrial part. You have, for example, as you told, it's a very important issue, the private lighting. For example, in Campania we have no controls of private lighting, and so someone says, okay, public lighting is bad, it doesn't work, but the problem sometimes is due to private people. And so have you considered the fact to spread your instrument, your results and your methodologies to other regions, and why not in Europe?
Yes, there is for the satellite data cover entire global.
Okay, this could be done by everyone. Okay.
SQM-NITO.
But you spoke about the spectroradiometer and the cheap instruments to your heroes.
This is the SQM network, but the law I discussed before the meeting with GianPiero, the law is not applied for the product. It's applied only for public, and this is the... So
this point emerged is very important. So GianPiero, please, just because you are so active in, you have to bring this condition. Otherwise, okay, they say everything is good, but we have luminaires that are going everywhere in any direction, with every colors, with even dynamic effects. So it is really a pity not to consider it. Yes. So today we can do a lot of things in balancing all these aspects. It is a long road, and I don't see yet a simple solution, obviously, but we have to study on it. And surely we have today at our disposal the new technologies that can help us. Anyway, we speak of illuminance levels, of technologies, of spectra, and so and so, but we have not to neglect one of the most important chains of this process, which is the light designer, because you can use the best luminaire in the world, you can use the best spectrum analyzed by biologists and approved, but if the design isn't good, you vanish everything. So I ask Paolo, how important is the lighting designer role for a good nature center outdoor lighting? And I add also, how much this concept is spread, just because you are a board member of your association, how much this concept is spread among your colleagues?
Okay, to reply, to answer the first question, obviously lighting designer is very important, but not just because I'm a lighting designer, but because like in every field, we need qualified people. So, when I face a project, obviously I, like, for example, a psychopath in a wood. Obviously I'm not a biologist, I'm not a researcher, and I cannot be. And so I have to collect all this information, and then I can make it practical in my project. So that's why we need qualified people, because you have to be prepared to speak with so many different professional people, men, and then deal with them. And after that, you have to go to the company, to the light company, and ask with a specific request, then they can satisfy your request to make a good project. And after all this, you have to be enough sensitive to understand what kind of problem you have to face, because obviously I want to respect, for example, the bats, but then obviously I have to respect also the people who is living there. So you have to deal with so many things, and you have to be prepared. So that's why we need a lighting designer to face this kind of project. We want to make it one more step, but then we in Italy today, we don't have a figure as a lighting designer, officially speaking. So I'm very happy to know that at the end of this year, we should have at least a norm by uni that should be define who is a lighting designer and who he needs to know to be a lighting designer. This is fundamental to grow up the movement and make people sensitive about this. And to reply to your second question, I think another big problem is that there is no divulgation about light with the people. And if we just talk about all this problem between ourselves, it's not enough, because people must know that there is a lighting designer. Many times, few times happens that when I explain what kind of job I do to my friends, to whoever, they say, "Oh, I didn't know there is a job like yours." So that's why we need to work at every level. We have to work at the universities. We have to work with the common people, just saying common, they don't know like design, and we have to work between ourselves, improve ourselves. So that there is a huge work to do to improve the lighting design.
I agree. If you have to know that even, I speak for Italy, in academic world, who teaches lighting technology and lighting design is considered not so good. Oh, you are doing lighting. They say they are not, for example, the expert in energy efficiency of buildings, and also sometimes electrical engineer. GianPiero is an exception, but generally they say, okay, we put some luminaires, we have these luminous fluxes, and so it is good. And so there's a big difficulty in changing the mind of people at every level, from academic point of view, from the professional point of view. Moreover, these aspects are in evolution, so we cannot say, okay, you have to learn this and go with load. No. You have to learn this and you have to update your knowledge according to what researchers are finding. So I think that this is an effort to be made, and perhaps a huge cooperation between association, between also architects, but also the association of lighting is necessary. Otherwise, we remain speaking to each other, not around, but in line on this table. So this is the problem. I don't know if we have 5 minutes, because we started before. So if some of you wants to say one observation, feel free. You, I swear.
I have to respond whenever I hear anything factual that I'm not sure. There was a comment before, sorry, for number 2, about lighting reduces crime. I'm slightly unconvinced, especially universal crime. You have to think what are the mechanisms by which lighting might reduce crime. So lighting can, one thing it can do is make us see better when it's dark. So it might help those crimes where, so the presence of light might help those crimes where us being able to see is useful. You can see somebody approaching or you can identify them later. On the other hand, darkness is good for criminals because the anonymity we get from darkness encourages negative behaviours, even as much as putting sunglasses on encourages people to do more negative things. So there's a visibility benefit of light. The other one is something I remain a bit unconvinced about, which is called community pride. And the thought is that if you put new lighting in an area, the residents suddenly become law-abiding and crime stops. I think what it means is they're more likely to be on the streets a bit happier, more people on the streets, more people on the streets, more people for me to attack and rob. It's the alternative. And I think if community pride was a good thing, I reckon there are other ways we could do it that didn't use energy or harm the environment, not lighting. Of the studies, I know crime is a really tricky thing to analyse because generally the police do not report individual crimes to respect the identity of people. So in all the studies I've encountered, you have to make really really broad simplifications about the type of crime you study, or the area might be narrowed down to a few miles squared or something, rather than precise level, and that's what we need. So that hinders it. In the studies where people have looked at crime, generally they've said there is a reduction in crime, and the effect size normally is very small. And the ones I'm aware of, it's generally not enough that you get excited about. Maybe it doesn't reduce crime, but it has a differential effect on different types of crime. Some studies say crime goes up if you put more lights. So I think it's really a tricky one. Something that I've done and some people who do is instead of looking at a change in lighting, to look at a change of ambient light level, which is a transition from daylight to dark. And if we look at that short period before and after clock change, there's a certain type of day which is dark one week, daylight the other week, or vice versa. We can look at which crimes are affected. That means because you're not installing lighting and saying, well, hey, here's a new installation, does it affect crime? Of course it does, because you've just done something. And the transition day from daylight to darkness, there's no intervention, there's nothing to excite about, it's just visibility. And the only crime that gets reduced there that I found is robbery. And that's robbery, like the threat of violence on people who take things. And that's probably because we can see them, but on no other types of crime. Now, I could be totally wrong there, but we need to know, because it's no good us giving information to a lighting designer to say, if you put in lighting at this area, you're going to reduce crime. If that isn't the case, well, that's terrible, I think. Now, I'm saying that in Britain, about a year ago, there was the clown we had as Prime Minister said, we're going to spend lots of money on road lighting as a response to attacks on women. Now, what that might do is make you feel safer to walk, it does, but if it does nothing about the crime, we've made the situation worse, and I think that's a scary thing. So we have to be really careful about the information we give and try to make sure it's accurate. There was a comment about design, and you have many things to consider. Wow, I'm overwhelmed by design, I could never do it. There's just far too many competing interests. And then when I've spoken to lighting designers who do road lighting, like residential area lighting, the thing they have to consider most is public response. Forget anything else, it's public response. If you do anything the public in that street, the residents don't like, they're going to complain. I've looked at installations and put more light in, made it better, people complain. Put less light in, make it darker, people complain. Whatever you do, it's different, people complain. And I think that's one of the biggest problems to overcome is we want to design for more objective reasons, not just the risk of somebody in the street complaining, which means the mayor loses the next vote and is cross with you. So we have to be really precise with our evidence.
It's all right. Thank you, Steve. And I would add that this is a complex issue, and obviously also social aspects should be considered, because if you stay in a district where crime is common, it is difficult to avoid that the criminal, stops working because, there's the light. Or he goes to another zone, less lit, or otherwise he adapts to the new condition. I think it is. So this is one conclusion that I would to this brief talk, but a lot of issues emerged, and what emerged mainly was the necessity to deep all these topics, to speak. The speaks should be among the different professionals, the different field of research professionals, and it is important that what could be the common goal, the common aim is to find a better world for everything, both from the environmental aspect, but also for all the living beings in the earth. So I thank you for your attention. You have the discussion.